Have you ever walked into a room and then just stood there thinking, wait, why did I come in here? Maybe you've searched all over the house for your car keys, only to find them sitting right in front of you. Or maybe you've been talking to someone you've known for years and suddenly their name just disappears. You know their face, you know exactly who they are, but for a few seconds, the name is nowhere. Most of us laugh these moments off, but as we get older, there's a question that can suddenly make those little memory slips feel a lot more serious. Is this just normal aging, or could this be the beginning of dementia? And here's where things get interesting, because forgetting someone's name isn't necessarily the kind of memory problem doctors worry about most. Neither is occasionally losing your keys. The more important question is, what happens to information after your brain receives it? Because there's a big difference between having trouble finding a memory and never properly storing that memory in the first place. And once you understand that difference, you'll have a much better idea of what doctors actually look for when they're trying to distinguish normal forgetfulness from more concerning memory changes. So let's start with something incredibly common. Imagine you're at a family gathering and someone introduces themselves. You hear their name, you understand it. A few minutes later, though, it's gone. You can picture their face. You know you've met them before. You may even remember where you met them. But their name? Nothing. Then maybe 20 minutes later, you're driving home and suddenly, oh, that's it, the name comes back. That kind of experience is usually very different from actually losing the memory. The information was there. Your brain just took longer to retrieve it. It's a little like searching for a file on your computer. The file hasn't disappeared. You just couldn't find it right away. The same thing can happen with your glasses. You search the bedroom, then the living room. You look beside the sofa. Maybe you even start blaming someone else for moving them. And then there they are, sitting on the kitchen counter. You forgot where you put them. But once you see them, everything makes sense again. You recognize them, you remember what happened, and you move on with your day. That's an important distinction. As we get older, it can take a little longer to retrieve certain information. You might forget why you walked into a room, then remember a few seconds later. You might struggle to remember an actor's name, only for it to suddenly come back later that evening. You might forget one small detail from a conversation while still remembering the conversation itself. Annoying? Absolutely. But by themselves, these occasional slips don't automatically mean dementia. Now, here's where the story changes. Doctors aren't simply asking, did you forget something? They're asking a much more important question. What happened to that information after you received it? Imagine your daughter tells you, I'm coming over for dinner on Saturday. You hear her. You understand what she said. You know she's coming Saturday. A few hours later, you ask, what day are you coming over? She tells you Saturday. You carry on with your evening. Then an hour later, you ask again. Wait, what day are you coming? She reminds you, Saturday. And later that evening, you ask the exact same question again. Now we're looking at a different pattern because the issue may not be that you can't find the information. The issue may be that the information isn't staying there in the first place. And that distinction is extremely important. Think about your brain like a library. Every day, new information comes in, new conversations, new appointments, new instructions, new experiences. Normally, those new books eventually make it onto the shelves. Sometimes you have trouble finding one. That's okay. The book is still there. You can search for it. You can eventually pull it back off the shelf. But what if new books keep arriving and they never actually make it onto the shelves? The information comes in, but it doesn't stay. That can help explain why someone with significant memory problems may repeatedly ask the same question. They're not necessarily ignoring you. They're not necessarily refusing to listen. They may genuinely have no memory of asking the question before. And for a family member, understanding that difference can be huge, because what looks like, why aren't you listening to me, may actually be, I genuinely don't remember this conversation. But memory isn't the only thing doctors look at. There's another question that's just as important. Is the change beginning to affect everyday life? Think about the things you normally do without even thinking about them. Paying bills, remembering appointments, following a recipe you've made for years, taking medications correctly, making ordinary decisions, driving familiar routes. These things require more than memory. They require attention, planning, problem solving, decision making, and the ability to put several steps together. Forgetting to buy milk? That's normal. You get home, you realize what happened, you know why you forgot, and you can fix it. But imagine repeatedly forgetting to pay important bills, leaving the stove on, becoming confused while making a meal you've prepared for decades, or suddenly getting lost on a road you've driven hundreds of times. That's different. Not because one mistake automatically means dementia. It doesn't. Everyone has distracted days. Everyone forgets things. Everyone makes mistakes. Doctors are looking for a pattern that keeps happening, a pattern that becomes more noticeable, and eventually a pattern that starts interfering with everyday independence. There's another clue that families sometimes overlook: awareness. Many people who experience ordinary age-related memory changes are actually very aware of them. They might say, "My memory isn't quite as quick as it used to be," or "I couldn't remember that name for a minute, but it eventually came back." They're noticing the change. But with more significant cognitive problems, a person may sometimes have less awareness of how much their abilities have changed. And sometimes, the family notices it first. A husband might say, "She's asking me the same question several times every morning." A daughter might notice, "Mom has started missing appointments. She never used to do that." A son might realize, "Dad keeps telling me the same story several times in one conversation." Those observations matter, and understanding them can change the way a family responds. Instead of getting angry, instead of thinking someone is being stubborn, they may begin to understand they may genuinely not remember. That understanding can turn frustration into compassion. But now there's something I really don't want you to miss. Memory problems do not always mean dementia. There are several other things that can affect memory, concentration, and thinking. Poor sleep can leave you mentally foggy. Stress can make it harder to concentrate. Depression can affect thinking and memory. Certain medications can interfere with attention. Vitamin deficiencies can contribute to cognitive symptoms. Thyroid problems can cause similar complaints. Poorly controlled diabetes can affect thinking. And even hearing loss can sometimes make a person appear forgetful. Think about that one for a second. If you don't clearly hear what someone says, your brain may never receive the information properly. And if the information never comes in clearly, there may be nothing reliable for your brain to store. Later, it can look like you forgot something. But the problem may have started earlier. You never fully heard the information in the first place. That's why a proper memory evaluation isn't simply about asking, "How many words can you remember?" A healthcare professional looks at the bigger picture. When did the changes begin? How often are they happening? Are they becoming more frequent? Are they getting worse? Are everyday activities becoming harder? Has someone else noticed? They may also ask about sleep, mood, medications, hearing, medical history, and changes noticed by family members. And there's another question that can completely change the picture. How quickly did the change happen? A gradual change over several years is different from confusion that appears suddenly. If someone becomes suddenly confused or their mental state changes quickly, there can be many possible causes, including medications, dehydration, infection, or other medical problems. Some causes may be temporary, some may be treatable. That's why you shouldn't automatically tell yourself it's dementia. Sometimes there's another explanation, and finding that explanation matters, but doctors don't stop with memory. They also pay attention to language. Occasionally forgetting a word, that happens. You know exactly what you want to say, but the word just won't come. You wait, and suddenly, there it is. But if someone is increasingly struggling to find ordinary words, frequently using the wrong words, losing the ability to finish simple thoughts, or having increasing difficulty understanding ordinary conversations, that's something worth discussing with a healthcare professional. And then there's navigation. Missing a turn on an unfamiliar road, not unusual. Getting a little confused in a new place, that happens. But becoming lost on a route you've driven for 20 years, that's different. Again, it doesn't automatically prove dementia, but it is a meaningful change from your usual ability. And that brings us back to the biggest idea in this entire video. One forgotten name doesn't tell the whole story. One misplaced pair of glasses doesn't tell the whole story. One day of mental fog doesn't tell the whole story. The pattern matters, the progression matters, and the effect on everyday life matters. So what should you do if you're worried about your own memory or the memory of someone you love? First, don't panic, but don't automatically dismiss it either. A lot of people wait months, sometimes even years, because they tell themselves, "It's just old age. Everyone forgets things. I don't want to make a big deal out of it." But persistent changes deserve attention, not because you should assume the worst, but because there may be an explanation. And understanding what's actually happening gives you the opportunity to respond appropriately. When you speak with a healthcare professional, they may ask when the changes started, how often they happen, whether they're getting worse, whether someone else has noticed, and whether everyday activities are becoming more difficult. They may also ask about medication medications, sleep, mood, hearing, and medical history. You may be given a memory or thinking screening as well. You might be asked to remember a few words, draw a clock, name everyday objects, or answer questions about the date and location. These aren't simply pass or fail exams, they're tools that help evaluate different areas of thinking. Depending on the situation, further evaluation may include blood tests or brain imaging. The goal isn't simply to put a label on the problem. The goal is to understand why it's happening, because not every memory problem has the same cause, and not every cause has the same treatment. Now let's talk about something much more positive. Growing older does not automatically mean losing your memory. And while nobody can guarantee perfect memory throughout life, there are healthy habits that support overall brain health. Regular physical activity matters. Even something as simple as walking can support your overall health. A balanced diet matters too. Vegetables, fruits, whole grains, healthy fats, lean sources of protein. Managing conditions such as high blood pressure, cholesterol problems, and diabetes is also important for overall health. And please don't underestimate sleep. Your brain isn't simply switching off while you sleep. Sleep plays an important role in memory and brain function. Social connection matters too. A conversation with a friend, time with family, volunteering, learning something new. These activities keep your brain engaged in ways that go beyond simply doing puzzles. You can read, learn an instrument, study a language, try a new hobby, keep challenging yourself. None of these things can guarantee that memory problems will never happen, but together they can support a healthier brain throughout life. Now, let's come back to the question we started with. You forget where you put your keys. Should you panic? Probably not. You walk into a room and forget why you're there. Should you assume it's dementia? Not necessarily. You struggle to remember someone's name, but the name comes back later. Again, that can happen with normal aging, but instead of asking, did I forget something? Ask yourself a different set of questions. Are these memory slips becoming more frequent? Are you repeatedly forgetting information you were just given? Are recent conversations or events disappearing from memory? Are familiar tasks becoming difficult? Are everyday responsibilities becoming harder to manage? Are you getting lost in places you know well? Are family members noticing changes in your thinking or behavior? And perhaps most importantly, is this clearly different from the way you used to function? That's the pattern that deserves attention. Not because every memory problem means dementia, but because significant changes deserve an explanation. Some causes can be progressive, some can be temporary, and some can be treated. So the purpose of this video isn't to make you afraid every time you forget your keys. It's to give you something much more useful: perspective. Because fear tells you to assume the worst. Knowledge gives you a way to recognize a meaningful pattern. So the next time you forget something, don't immediately ask yourself, do I have dementia? Take a breath. Look at the bigger picture. Did the memory come back? Was this an occasional mistake? Are you still managing your everyday life normally? Or are you noticing a pattern that's becoming harder and harder to ignore? That difference matters. And if you or someone you love is experiencing persistent changes, don't simply write them off as getting older. Talk with a healthcare professional. Getting checked does not mean something terrible has been confirmed. Sometimes the explanation is reassuring, and sometimes finding a problem early gives you more options, because your memory is more than names and dates. It's your family stories, the places you've been, the people you've loved, the experiences that shaped you, the little moments you never want to forget. So when something changes, the best response isn't panic, it's understanding, it's awareness, and when necessary, it's action. If this video helped you understand the difference between normal forgetfulness and concerning memory changes, share it with someone you care about, a parent, a spouse, friend, because someone you know may be quietly asking themselves the exact same question. And if you've ever had a memory slip that made you stop and think, what just happened? Tell us about it in the comment. Your experience may help someone else realize they're not alone. Take care of your brain, take care of your body, and don't ignore changes that deserve attention. Until next time, stay sharp.